In the years prior to 1927, Charles A. Lindbergh was a little-known airmail pilot. However, his famous flight made him an international celebrity. While flying as an airmail pilot, Lindbergh learned of a $25,000 prize offered to the first pilot to successfully cross the Atlantic Ocean by air from New York to Paris. Lindbergh jumped at the opportunity, securing the support of investors from St. Louis, Missouri. With their backing, he commissioned the construction of the aircraft that would later become known as the Spirit of St. Louis. Officially known as the Ryan NYP, the Spirit of St. Louis was produced by the Ryan Aeronautical Company, a mailplane manufacturer. The aircraft incorporates some unique features. Foremost among these is the complete lack of a forward windshield, meaning the pilot had to rely on only the cabin's side windows and the aircraft's instruments to fly. This issue was caused by the large amount of fuel necessary for the Spirit's flight across the Atlantic. Though a daunting issue for most pilots, Lindbergh was not concerned with this design feature, as his time flying airmail had taught him how to fly without forward visibility. A small forward periscope was installed in the cockpit to allow for some forward view. The aircraft was powered by a 9-cylinder Wright R790 Whirlwind radial engine, which could produce a maximum of 237 horsepower. The engine proved very reliable and functioned without any problems during Lindbergh's flight. The relatively low, though typical for the time, output of the engine meant that Lindbergh averaged just over 100 miles per hour during his flight. For reference, a modern airliner averages around 575 miles per hour. On the morning of May 20th, 1927, Lindbergh prepared his aircraft for takeoff. Poor weather conditions had delayed the flight several days, but the 20th was deemed acceptable. At 7:52 a.m., Lindbergh took off from New York, his fuel-laden aircraft barely clearing the end of the runway. Heading east, he began the long trek to Paris. It wasn't long before Lindbergh began to feel tired. In order to keep himself awake, he kept his windows open and flew as low as 10 feet above the ocean. The Spirit of St. Louis had been specifically designed to be somewhat aerodynamically unstable, requiring frequent corrections. This was meant to keep Lindbergh alert throughout his flight. About halfway across the Atlantic, Lindbergh entered a storm front. The turbulent air buffeted his aircraft, and frost began to build up on the Spirit. Fortunately, the frost melted after Lindbergh exited the storm. Frost buildup is very dangerous for aircraft, as it adds extra weight to the plane and causes quite a bit of drag. Lindbergh fought exhaustion the entire flight, but as he drew near to Europe, he began having a harder time staying awake. There were several times when he began to drift asleep, only to jolt awake soon after. Fortunately, he soon spotted fishing boats on the coast of Ireland, giving him the energy to stay awake. Using Ireland as a guide, Lindbergh made his way to France. Amazingly, he had only drifted 2 miles off course while crossing the entire Atlantic, and was actually hours ahead of schedule. Reaching France, Lindbergh followed the Seine River to Paris, where he landed at 10:22 p.m. local time. A French crowd mobbed his plane in celebration. His flight lasted 33.5 hours in total. Lindbergh was escorted back to the United States by a U.S. naval convoy amid international celebration. He traveled to 49 and 50 states in the Spirit of St. Louis, as well as several other countries, receiving parades at every stop. His incredible feat, as well as his tours of the country and the world, helped spark a tremendous interest in aviation. Unfortunately, the years after his accomplishment were more questionable. Lindbergh traveled Europe to promote aviation, stopping in the newly formed Nazi Germany. Lindbergh was very impressed by German aviation, and found that he agreed with much of the Nazi ideology. Lindbergh later fought to keep the United States out of World War II, believing that the US would be crushed by an almighty Germany. He also wrote works in support of anti-Semitism, white supremacy, and eugenics. He did eventually serve in the Pacific Theater as an unofficial combat pilot, where he flew Lockheed P-38 Lightnings. It's also worth noting that there was a significant event during Lindbergh's life before World War II, in which his son, only a year and a half old, was kidnapped. Lindbergh's son was eventually found to have been murdered amid a national investigation. Charles Lindbergh helped bring the excitement of aviation to the world. Despite his ties to Nazism, he is remembered today as one of the foremost pilots in history. His 1927 flight was a tremendous achievement. The model that you've seen of the Spirit of St. Louis in this video is a scale model built by me. I built it 100% from scratch, purely from pictures of the real aircraft and measurements. It is made entirely out of cardboard and tape, but is fairly sturdy. My model is roughly 1/50th of the size of the real aircraft and features an airfoil in the wing. The propeller spins. One of the most interesting things that I ran into when building this model is the strength of the landing gear. Like nearly all aircraft of the 1920s, the Spirit of St. Louis features non-retractable landing gear and externally braced wings. This means that external pylons help support the wings, as the wings themselves were not yet strong enough to withstand the stress of flying. In early monoplanes like the Spirit, the external supports in the gear were typically connected. Though the connecting pieces were tedious to attach, the design of their construction resulted in a very sturdy set of landing gear, even when made out of cardboard and tape. This strength is a testament to the excellent design of the aircraft. I really enjoyed building this aircraft, found it a really fun challenge. I might build more aircraft in the future.